Let's take you back to this story. The EFF set to protest outside the French embassy in Pretoria, calling for the withdrawal of France from the continent of Africa. They will picket at the embassy to demand that France stay out of African affairs. For more on the story, let's cross live now to Canny Maphanga. A very good morning to you, Canny. Has the protest begun? What are you seeing on the ground?
Morning to you, Desiree, and the viewers at home. We're currently live here from the Magnolia Dell Park in Pretoria, where the EFF is expected to march to the French embassy. Remember, they're choosing to commemorate Africa Day by marching to the French embassy, and these Africa Day celebrations kind of symbolize the African people's determination to free themselves from foreign domination as well as exploitation. We now have the French in Africa that the EFF is looking at. As you know, there are a couple of Francophone countries in Africa, countries such as Burkina Faso, Gabon, Cameroon. And although these countries have enjoyed at least 60 years of independence, those French systems are still pervasive in those countries. But I'm joined by the EFF Sinawo Thambo, who's going to elaborate further on what the EFF is planning today, as well as why they've chosen to zoom in on France and Africa. Sinawo, thank you so much for joining us. Can you please elaborate for the viewers at home as to why the EFF has chosen to zoom into France and Africa for Africa Day?
Look, Africa Day, of course, marks the formation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963, where great Pan-African leaders such as Julius Nyerere, Sékou Touré, Kwame Nkrumah charted a path towards African independence, African unity, economic integration, and of course freeing Africa from imperial dominance. And the program of the EFF today is continuing on that generational mission to confront colonialists head on and tell them that we will not accept continued micromanaging of African affairs. We are not a junior in global affairs, where Africa must stand up and be able to determine its own affairs politically, economically, culturally, educationally, scientifically, and otherwise. So we are confronting France because France continues to be a festering parasite within the politic and the body politic of Africa. They continue to micromanage West Africa. They continue to determine the currencies of Francophone nations in terms of where they keep their monetary reserves, which 50% of them are kept in France. They continue to dictate who leads African nations, particularly in West Africa. They continue to meddle in the affairs of African institutions, such as Pan-African Parliament, where they sponsor shopping sprees for members of those states to a point where they even threaten members of Pan-African Parliament that Pan-African Parliament must be hosted in France. So we want France to exit the affairs of Africa at an educational level, at a monetary level, and at a political level, because they have continued military bases in Africa. They have continued influence in military camps of African armies. They have an influence in the terrorist organizations and sort of organizations that seek to destabilize African states at the moment at which an African state might refuse the influence of France. So France is an entity that continues to undermine African independence, and the EFF is confronting them head on because that is our generational mission as a Pan-African movement.
Could you believe that the independence of African countries could be achieved in collaboration with the French?
Absolutely not. France's primary agenda has never been the unity of Africa. Since the time they were involved in the brutal slave trade of our people, where they trafficked human beings across the world and subjected them to slave labor on plantations, France has never had an interest in the freedom of Africans. They have created a standard where they want African people, black people, to aspire to white civilization standards. So in order to be a human being, you must aspire to be French. That was their colonial agenda here in Africa. You must speak the French language. You must understand French cultural norms as the ones to aspire to be. And that is France's primary agenda. So we can't unite Africa under the guidance of France. France must get away from African affairs in order for us to be able to chart economic integration. And that economic integration needs all African states to unite under the primary agenda of African unity, because there can't be a unity of South Africa without Zimbabwe being economically emancipated. There can't be a unity of Zambia, of Namibia, without there can't be freedom of Zambia and Namibia without integration of our collective efforts towards intra-African trade, economic cooperation, railway systems which are interconnected, and mineral-based economies, which will ensure that we use our wealth as a mineral-rich continent to establish our own currencies, establish our own parliament, establish our own army, establish our own United States of Africa with one president. And this needs of leaders of Africa to not be selfish, to not be self-centered, to not have an aspiration for power at the expense of anything else. So it needs selflessness.
And just lastly, will your demands to the French be met with any deadlines?
The EFF will present a memorandum today, which will be read after the Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF leads proceedings to the French Embassy. And that will be a detailed outline of what we're demanding from the French and the timelines that we're giving them later on today.
Thank you. That was EFF spokesperson Sinawo Thambo, just articulating the EFF's position on the front in Africa. I just want to give you a quick view of the venue that we're at. We're at the Magnolia Dell Park. It's still a bit early. EFF members are expected to gather here first, and then we will move just a short distance away to the French Embassy, where the program is expected to begin. We're expected to see a majority of the EFF leadership here, where they will address their demands, and we'll be able to update you further according to this. Desiree, over to you in studio.
Thank you so much. And of course, Kenny, you'll continue to give us the latest in terms of this development. This is how the EFF is marking Africa Day, trying to break down the vestiges of colonialism.